car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hello and welcome into The Attorneys, and thank you for sitting with us each Sunday night and allowing us to come into your living room. It's been our privilege over the last 11 years to answer issues on a legal front that face you in your communities. It's always better here on The Attorneys when we get people involved by asking questions. On your screen throughout the show for the next 30 minutes, you'll have an opportunity to call at 844-LAW-TALK, or there'll be a text number where you can text. We're also available at all times on social media, and we do have lawyers standing by right now for a free, off-air, confidential conversation to be able to answer questions that may be impacting you. So if it relates to tonight's topic, great, we're here to answer those questions, and if not, if it relates to another legal topic, we've got people standing by to help and assist you. We're really lucky tonight to be able to talk about Social Security and disability, as well as VA benefits and railroad benefits. Jessica Friedman is with us tonight, and we're super excited to have you on to talk about these topics. This is an interesting area of the law, but one that requires someone to go above and beyond law school to really understand this. How did you get into this area of the law, Social Security and VA and railroad benefits?
I was born into this.
Okay.
My dad started this law firm. I grew up listening to stories at the dinner table between my parents, who are both lawyers, about what my dad was doing at work and the people that he was helping and what a difference it made in their lives. So when I got out of law school, I clerked for a judge. I thought I was going to go do something else. I thought there was no way in the world I was going to come back to Birmingham and work with my dad. But I met my now husband, moved back to Birmingham, and my dad in the interim had kind of started dabbling a little bit in some veterans work. So by the time I moved back, the veterans practice was getting started, and in the years since I started running the firm, I added in the railroad disability because that seemed to make sense.
Yeah, do those things go together? I mean, it sounds to me most of this stuff is statutory.
It is.
And so it seems like they kind of jihad together, if you will.
They do. So Social Security and railroad are run very similarly in that you have to prove that you're disabled. They have the same definition of disability in that you're unable to work. There are some differences with railroad because it depends on how much railroad service you have, and that tells you what type of disability you have to prove, whether it's total disability or occupational, based off of whether you can do your own job anymore or whether there's no job that you can do. And they both get your medical coverage, so either Medicare or Medicaid. But the one thing that's really interesting is that people could be entitled to benefits under Social Security and the railroad, but the railroad benefit is quite a bit higher.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit first about Social Security and disability. There's two different types I know that come up a lot. We get questions about this all the time, and in fact, in my suits, when we're resolving suits, the difference between SSI and SSDI matters significantly. Can you just give us a general layman term rundown on what the difference is between those two?
Sure. So the two programs are SSI, which is Supplemental Security Income, and Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI. SSI is a needs-based program. They both had the same disability requirements in that you can't work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But for SSI, you have to have limited means and resources. And often it means that you don't have a strong work history. We see it for children who haven't worked at all. They've been disabled, their whole lives if they're born with some sort of disease or condition. But sometimes parents, we find, have to take time off to care for children like that. Or maybe it was a stay-at-home mother who didn't work and now she is applying for benefits. So that would be SSI. And for an individual, you have to have $2,000 or less in income and resources. There are certain things that they don't count, like they won't count your house, they don't count your car, but the second car gets counted. The amount of money you have in your bank account gets counted. So SSDI is what we see with people who do have a work history. So they've worked consistently, and they've paid through their FICA taxes and through the taxes that their employer pays into the Social Security system. And then a calculation is done based on how much you've paid in, and that determines how much you get out. And that benefit is higher.
And so I have heard, as I've worked through this in my practice too, that SSDI, sometimes a child or an individual who's lost a parent has the ability to claim the benefit of their parents' payments into the system. Is that a fair assessment of how it works?
Yes, so there are a couple of ways that a child could be getting benefits on their parent's record. One is if the parent passes away.
Okay.
Then until the child reaches I think it's 18, the age of majority, they are entitled to benefits, survivor's benefits. The other way is sometimes we have what we call disabled adult child benefits. So if it's one of these children who got SSI as they were growing up because they were born with a condition, they haven't been able to work, when their parent goes on retirement,
okay,
becomes disabled, or dies, that child then is able to collect benefits on their parents' earnings record.
Okay.
And that requires being disabled prior to the age of 22.
Another reason why we want to have a lawyer involved in this, to be able to, know the tricks of the trade in that area. There are, lots of lawyers that may dabble in this area that don't even know about that. Let's talk about this just for a second. I've seen statistics thrown around. They change every year, but something in the area of 60 to 65% of the people that apply for SSI or SSDI are initially denied. Then they go get an attorney, and miraculously, they're successful in their claim. Not always, but they're successful in their claim many times. What is the reasoning for, why do you think there's such a high first turn down rating for people that try and do this themselves?
I think that there are a few things that kind of factor into it. A lot of lawyers will not take the cases at the initial level. They don't want to file that application because the way our fees work is it's based off of the amount of money that we recover for the client. Okay. So if the claim hasn't been going for very long, theoretically, there's not that much money in it for an attorney. At our firm, we do the initial applications, so I think it's important to get in on at the beginning because it helps the client. It helps. We're able to help them gather medical records. We're able to talk to the person at DDS and find out exactly. DDS is the state disability agency that works with Social Security to gather medical records and review them and send them out to doctors. So we talk to the adjudicator and find out what it is they need, what's missing. We help facilitate those conversations between our clients and the government. And
I bet they've got a higher percentage of those that actually get approved the first go around when they've got a lawyer involved.
They do, definitely. The statistics are that you have a much better chance when you have a lawyer.
So we're going to head out to commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit, if we can, Jessica, about the process of what does someone go through from the time that they enter your office to actually start a claim and work their way through it, and kind of what that process and adjudication is. As we go out to break, we just want to remind you, as always, we have lawyers that are standing by right now to answer your questions. You can call us, text us, hit us up on social media. We are available, and there are lawyers standing by to assist. We'll be back from break in just a minute. I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with the attorneys. Welcome back into the attorneys. We've made it through segment 1, starting segment 2. Please remember, we have lawyers that are available all the time for a free, off-air, confidential conversation. You can text us or call us at 844-LAW-TALK throughout the night. We actually have lawyers standing by to talk about it. All right, so Jessica, when we went to break, I wanted to get to this concept of kind of what is the process, because people are intimidated by process sometimes, and they want their hand held through and led, guided, and directed by a lawyer that understands that, especially in your area of the law. So from the time someone comes in, can you just kind of generally lay out what is the process of how you would apply for SSI or SSDI benefits?
So up until recently, you could not apply for SSI benefits through a lawyer. The applicant had to do it themselves, set up a phone call with Social Security. I think that's because you have to divulge so much of your financial information, and so they used to have to make an appointment. Now we are able to send an inquiry to Social Security that then prompts them to call the client and set up that set up that interview. I think it's supposed to be a 2-week turnaround now, and that just started a few months ago. But
do you prep them in advance to get them kind of thinking about the things they need to talk about?
We do, but that at the beginning, all they're going to ask is, why can't you work? What's your past work? And then they get into how much is in your bank account. Okay. They take your bank account information so they can do a direct deposit if you win. They ask you who you live with, because that also could have an effect on it. So if you're married, there's a higher limit. I think it's $3,000 right now for the amount of income and resources you can have. But still, that's not a whole lot. And so we find that people still are going over that if one of the people is working. So we do give them a warning about how that's going to work. But very often what we do is we file a Social Security disability income, an SSDI application, and you can indicate on there that you would also like to apply for SSI. So we are able to file an application on the work-based benefit. And when we do that, we take some of the same information. We want to know how old you are, your Social Security number, your date of birth. They're going to ask things like they may that we need your mother's maiden name, things like that, just so that we can show that we know who you are. And once the application is filed with all of your medical information, we list your doctors. They will ask about your medications, any x-rays you've had, your entire medical history, and usually you start about 1 year prior to the date that you became disabled.
Hey, and I was going to ask you that question, just so the people listening right now understand. Do you have to have been disabled for 12 months to apply for these benefits, or is there, if there's an expectation you're going to be injured for that 12-month period, is that enough? Kind of explain that a little bit.
Right. So the requirement for disability is that you're unable to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that you have a condition that has lasted or is expected to last 12 months, or if it's a terminal case, then is expected to result in death. So that's what we're looking for. So we have people who come to us right after they've had a car accident, for example, and they're in a wheelchair. It's clear they're not going to be able to get back to what they were doing, and they may not be able to work at all. And so we can tell on the front end a lot of those people who are going to qualify for that 12 months. Social Security does have a habit of kind of putting pause on cases like that. They want to see how you do after a few months, so they set it for review 3 months later. It's a little bit frustrating, particularly when you know someone is not going to recover, but you've got to work within the system and do the best that you can. So after the initial application, and they will send you, if you lose, you will appeal to reconsideration. Reconsideration is very similar, except that at the initial level, they may send you out for an exam. At reconsideration, they generally don't. It's just kind of a review. Does it look good? Everything good? Check mark, move it on. Where we really see a lot of change is at the hearing level. That's where the majority of people who were denied at the initial level, that's where they get their opportunity to, they're more likely to win their case at a hearing, because that's your chance to sit down in front of a judge and actually tell them what it's like to be you. One person who has degenerative disc disease may work. The next one may not. What is it about your condition? Is it the pain? Does it affect your sleep? Is it causing depression that's interfering? So it's not as simple as just the diagnosis that's on the medical records.
I'm assuming that you get plenty of cases where someone comes in and you recognize that they're going to have a tough time qualifying for disability. You've probably got kind of a roadmap, if you will, for what Social Security is actually approving. Is that part of the advising process when you talk with someone, hey, look, this is too early for you? Because what I'm expecting is there are people right now listening saying, I'm afraid because calling a lawyer is a little intimidating, but I want a free opportunity to call a lawyer, to ask a lawyer whether I'm even in the realm of possibility to be approved. And I would suspect your answer is, don't be afraid to call a lawyer. We handle these cases and calls every single day.
Absolutely. So people call us, and especially people who have been in a career for a long time, they can see that they're not going to make it much longer. They're not quite out of working, but they know they can't really hold on. So we have that conversation about, what is happening at work? Are you missing work? Are you starting to take more sick days? How long do you think you're going to be able to hold out? And for clients like that, we'll come to an agreement. I'll say, when do you want to retire? When is that going to be? And then we start gathering the information ahead of time so that the day that they stop working, we can file the application and get things moving. There are also other people who just aren't sure as they're going along, and that's what we're here for. We're here to answer those questions. We tell them, we find out what kind of medical treatment they're getting. For example, someone asked me over the weekend about seizures. Seizures are really hard to prove unless you keep going to the doctor every time. They have to be documented. So I tell you what the strengths are. I'll tell you how to build the record, and maybe you need to come back in a few months after you've gotten under a doctor's care. But we definitely point you in the right direction.
And I know a question we always get when we do these SSDI shows is, will my doctor be involved in this process, or does the department, Social Security Department, appoint their own independent doctor? Can you just briefly answer that?
So your doctor will be involved to the extent that we need their medical records.
Okay.
Having their support is always much better than relying on Social Security's doctors, because the person who treats you and has diagnosed you and is prescribing your medication
knows your condition best.
Knows your condition best, right. So when you go to a Social Security doctor, you go in and it could be 15 minutes.
Yeah.
No one can get a full exam in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so we're going to go back out to break, and then we'll come back for our third segment. When we come back, I do want to hit VA and railroad, because I know those are two areas in your practice that you deal with on a daily basis, and I want to kind of unwrap those a little bit. So we're about to go to break. We'll be back in a little bit, but just remember, as always, the show is much better when people call, text, email, hit us up on social media. We have lawyers standing by to answer questions related to this topic or any topic that you may have. We finished our second segment. We're going to be moving on to our third segment. One more opportunity for you to get your questions in tonight. So thank you for watching. We'll be back in just a little bit. I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet, the phone book, or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTM 13. Welcome back into The Attorneys for our third and final segment. You've still got an opportunity now to call or text or hit us up on social media on Facebook and Instagram. We're available. We've got lawyers that are there to have a free, off-air, confidential conversation with you related to tonight's topic or any legal topic you may have. All right, so Jessica, as we start kind of this third and final segment, one thing I did want to ask that I know comes up a lot is, you know, if you are not working or you don't have any expectation to be able to work in the future, that is an easier claim than if someone has an expectation they may be able to partially work. Can you unwrap that just real quickly on Social Security? Because I think that's something that will clarify just a bit that you can apply under both circumstances.
Right, so we actually see that a lot. You know, clients will stop working saying that they can't work at all. But then they realize, you know, maybe there's a little bit of something I can do. I've got to have some money coming in. So they'll work a little bit here and there, but there is an earnings threshold. And as long as you don't go over that earnings threshold, then you're generally okay as long as you truly cannot work above that threshold. And it changes every year. But this works for before you file your application or before you win your case, and it also works after. There are different thresholds, but Social Security wants to encourage you to try to return to work, and I always encourage our clients to try to return to work if they can, and if they're able to work and they've been out for 12 months, then we are able to get a closed period of benefits. It doesn't mean that it's over. Okay.
And another reason why you want to get a lawyer involved to be able to lead, guide, and direct you through that process. Let's talk a little bit about VA benefits, railroad benefits. We talked a little bit about how you got involved in that area, but kind of compare and contrast these and kind of what you do in the railroad and VA cases.
Okay, so railroad is kind of complicated. There are a few different ways to do it. I actually keep a little sheet next to me on my desk. It's called my railroad cheat sheet, because there are two types of annuities that you can get for railroad. One of them is the total disability annuity, and that's payable to anyone if you have 10 years of service. Okay. And in some circumstances, you can get it for 5 to 9 years of service, but you have to be disabled from all types of work and be insured under Social Security's rules.
Could you have moved outside the railroad industry, but you were there and served a long enough time and get railroad benefits? Does that make sense?
It depends. Yes, you could have prior service, but you have to have a current connection to the railroad. Okay. So that makes it a little bit harder. For the occupational disability, you have to have an inability to do your regular railroad job. So a lot of these people start out doing one thing, and then they start doing something different. So you have to decide what they've done the most. Okay. And that's payable at any age if you have at least 10 years of service.
And does it apply just to certain railroad type employees, or is it pretty broad for the entire industry itself?
It's anyone who worked for the railroad.
Okay, and I would assume in order to understand this, getting to a lawyer probably is really smart.
It is, right. So for the occupational disability, you have to have the current connection. For the total disability, you don't.
Okay.
But, you know, I have people call me all the time saying that they've looked at the Railroad Retirement Board's website and they just can't figure out what's going on. So, you know, we're also here just to answer questions, even if you don't want to hire us.
Perfect.
We'll do our best.
Talk about VA a little bit, because I know that's a hot area, and we have a lot of clients that fall into this category. Just kind of unwrap that a little bit.
So for veterans who, they go off, they serve, they often have injuries that happen in service, or they get sick within a year of the time they get back. They had an exposure to a burn pit, or for Vietnam veterans, it was Agent Orange. So you come back and then you're sick after you've given all this time to your country. And so the Veterans Disability compensation compensates you for that. It's a monthly benefit, much like the Social Security. But instead of an all or nothing situation, it's not, are you completely disabled? It goes by body part. So if you have a psychological problem, you may have depression, and it may not be severe enough to keep you from working, but you should still be compensated for it. So you could get compensation for that. And then let's say that you also you hurt your knee. You were doing parachute jumps and you hurt your knee when you landed. You could get disability for that. So the question is, was there something that happened in service? Do you have a current diagnosis or a current condition? And what is the connection between the two? That you have to have all three of those factors to set up a claim.
You know, I often wonder, and people come to us on the personal injury side of things when they come to Hollis, Wright, and they ask sometimes, how do you guys get compensated? Do you investigate for free? With all of these claims, SSDI, VA, railroad, I know they're all a little bit different, but is it all statutory based on how you're compensated? Do you pay them direct? Do they pay you directly? How does that kind of generally work? So
for Social Security, most lawyers do it where Social Security withholds the fee, and it's 25% of the back benefit. There's a cap. The current cap is $6,000. They're about to raise it. I think it's to $7,200. But it's whichever one is less. And that works up until you end up with an appeal or a remand. If you win a case after a remand, then it just goes to a straight 25% without the cap. We're coming to an end of our show. It has been a great honor to have you on the show. You did a great job, and you're super knowledgeable. So for those watching tonight, we can always get you to Jessica if you've got questions or issues associated with Social Security or VA benefits or railroad. We thank you for watching and for being here each week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.